Okay, Keith, uh, the stage is set, and it's all yours.
All right, thank you. Well, I've been struck of late by the formula that of reality that Sidney Banks published in his book, The Enlightened Gardener, on page 42, I believe Brett just said. And I had the most unusual experience about a week ago. I was talking with this person, and this person had had a real uh, tragedy, you might say, or a predicament that they were dealing with as regards to their life savings. They had lost their life savings. Uh, uh, and so, as and Brett and I were working with them, they were in our what we call our apprenticeship program. So this is a one on or two on one type of program. So Brett and I work with an individual over a few months, and a really fascinating thing happened that I wanted to share with you because um, and Brett took the lead on this, so I was sort of um, watching and observing and learning. And this reality formula came into play because um, the power of these principles, which are the most incredible gift that humanity has realized since the beginning of time. And the simplicity and the power of this formula. And uh, I thought we might focus on it a bit for this town hall meeting. In that, and what I saw have happen in this session was the person really, really uh, distraught and upset and um, experiencing a lot of thinking about what she did wrong, what other people might have done wrong, all these blind box canyons that she had run up into trying to recover her savings. Um, and I found myself actually getting a little tempted to get into, well, the details or the rescue plan, or isn't there someone that could help with this sort of um, dilemma? And I didn't do it because Brett was taking the lead, and Brett was really terrific because in my mind, because I watched him really stick to that formula. We're going to talk about it more in depth today, and we're going to talk about it in greater depth in a program that we're going to start tomorrow, um, and for the next 4 Mondays in a row. But the healing that I saw have happen um, on my screen as I observed this session and witnessed it and saw it happen to the person. I saw the light come back into her eyes. I saw the problem in her mind disappear. And what I saw was a healing, a mental healing that was extraordinary. And I was struck by the power of this formula, that mind before reality, mind and consciousness and thought are are constants. And Sid talks about that in this piece on page 42 of the Enlightened Gardener, and you all can refer to it if you may choose. But the simplicity of the formula pre-existing, pre-existing in terms of not in terms of a belief, but in terms of a spiritual fact. These three spiritual facts, um, and Brett sticking with them. I watched this person's um, problems disappear. And what I saw was this countenance, a return to her life, her mental life, which had been blurred by her problems, um, and her feelings and her judgments and her angst and suffering. Her suffering was really acute, um, really painful, really real suffering. And um, tears and anxieties and regrets flooding in. Um, and the acuteness of her suffering was really marked. And again, as I was saying, I found myself tempted to get into some details about it. And fortunately for her, I didn't. I just held back and I let Brett take the lead. And what happened was, uh, slowly at first, but it just gained a momentum that the way this reality works for all of us, the reality, whatever we're in right now, or right now, or right now, the reality is a product, a beautiful product of our use of these principles. And yet, you know, the truth of it often remains hidden, just beyond our problem-oriented mindsets and our problem-oriented experiences and our problem-oriented difficulties and issues that we have, um, are 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 an exact representation of our use of these principles in the moment. And by sticking to the principles and pointing to the principles and explaining the principles in Brett's own um, disciplined and knowing and understanding way, um, it 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 showed her truth that was not evident at the beginning, and she was caught in this reality that she had innocently created, but couldn't find her way out of. And Brett was a guide. Um, so the healing didn't come from Brett, but it came from the truth of of the fact of the safety that we all have in the principles, because they're they're neutral. So in this formula for this um, power of this formula, it in the truth of the power of this formula lies healing, because and we've never had such a thing in existence. If you listen carefully to all the newscasts, all the broadcasts, all the news stories, all the issues, all the problems that people are constantly assaulted with. And people will often say sometimes, we're looking for research on this, that, or the other thing. And we're looking, so they don't really know where to look. And Brett, knowing where to look and where to point and where to stick with it, that was the thing that really struck me. Is he stuck with it, and um, he wouldn't deviate. And I want him to comment on this session, because I don't know whether it was his discipline. I don't really know what it was, but maybe he knew something that that was so powerful and so healing and so meaningful. It woke up something in this person, and and it really helped her. And by the end of the session, um, she was laughing. Um, it was like a whole new bearing came over her, and she the wisdom came back to her wisdom that was obliterated or temporarily, but as you all can probably attest to, I can certainly attest to, that wisdom can remain um, out of touch for your whole life, or be dashed in the in the power of an insight in the moment. But to get it to really die, um, is what we wanted to talk about today. Is the power of that formula. It's a little thing like when I would go to listen to Sid throughout all the years. Uh, as you all know, I've listened to him. He would often talk about the principles, return to the principles. And frankly, as a person sitting in the audience, I thought, oh, okay, here we go. He's going to talk about the principles again. But I didn't realize the power of this formula, that he was returning to it not as a kind of favorite topic. He was returning to it because of the profundity of the truth reflected in that formula. That that formula has healing power vested within it by God. And those three principles are the missing link that every human being is using from the moment of birth until the time of their death, and that explains the totality of the ranges of suffering all the way to enlightenment. And as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into these workings, you begin to unfold these layers of misunderstanding, and they begin to fall away. And if you're a counselor or you're someone working with someone to help heal them, you're privileged to join with them in this stripping away the illusion of misunderstanding, because it is an illusion. It really is. It's a mental um, phenomena created out of whimsy, out of lostness. And so we wanted to talk about that today, and delve further into it in this town hall, if with your permission. Um, and I want to thank Brett for revealing to me the power of this formula that I've been in one way or another touched by, and affected by for over 40 years. But it's the peeling away of these levels of misunderstanding, these levels of not love, not understanding, that we all we get lost in, and we get affected by, and we don't know where the pain and suffering is coming from. So it's a privilege for us to to dive deeper into this formula, which we will be doing in the next 4 weeks as well. But we wanted to kind of launch that investigation today. So Brett, do you want to add? Would you like to chime in here?
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. It's been wonderful working with you in that apprenticeship, and I look very much looking forward to doing some more with you. It's surprising how much I can learn from both you and the clients as well. Okay, so I had insight long ago that I was observing some patterns of what steady banks were doing, and that I came across some unreleased texts about some of the people that Steady Banks himself had worked with, and as I was reading them, the clients, if you call it that, were trying to bring all the information that they wanted to talk about. What is the meaning of life? What is the soul? What is psychology? What is religion? What is there was all this information, and other people brought in their problems, mental health problems, the circumstances they're going through, the mental health diseases, or even physical problems, that kind of thing. The pattern I saw was that Citibank never ever spoke about what all those clients try to bring to Citibank, which was a very different idea to what I thought a client session should be like. They hear the situation and try and help them to make sense of the situation with the principles. But Citibank spoke about the 3 principles, and it might even come across as being a little bit cold, if you like, that I'm not interested in your problem. But it actually turned out to be the most loving thing anyone can do. So once I saw that pattern, it gave me, maybe I could share the 3 principles that way. I don't need to get into what's going on for the client. I don't need to talk about what's going on for them. I don't need to talk about their problems. I don't need to talk about who they really are or whatever. So, and then we had this apprentice, incredible lady, I must say. And as we went along through the session, I started to hear not just what she was saying, but also where she was coming from that produced what she said. Okay, so it's not about what she said, it's about where she was coming from about it, right? Another way of saying it is, we are all expressing our thought in the moment, right? But what we are expressing is an indicator of where we're coming from in the moment. So for example, you may be very good at identifying what your thoughts are, but I'm not interested in what your thoughts are. I'm interested in knowing where your thoughts are coming from, which is a very different thing altogether. Right? So as we were working with the client, I started to see, oh, she's using the principle this way. Right? And in that way, maybe there was some belief or some idea or something about it that would seemingly going to help her. Okay. But it became apparent to me that by going into the content of what she was going through, she wasn't going to find what she was looking for. It's not there, but we can believe it is. Okay. So knowing that wisdom is inseparable from the principle of thought, not wisdom and your thought, wisdom and the principle of thought. Right? I kind of knew, let's try this. Let's go that way instead. Let's just talk about the three principles. I respect that she had her circumstances, but let's talk about the principle and how wisdom is connected to the principle. Cannot separate wisdom from the principle. So we spoke more and more about that. And there's something about it that took her out of this book of details about what she was going through. And once she was out of it, she was able to see something else. And when she found that something else, that was what was actually helping her. It didn't involve any analyzing, didn't involve any figuring out. It didn't involve trying to find a particular feeling. It didn't involve looking for a quiet mind, although she ended up with one temporarily, hopefully for longer. Right? I'm going, there's power there by having a moment of realizing that you don't have to be in the details of whatever is going on for you. You give yourself the opportunity to see something else altogether. And that's where healing comes from. And as I was doing it, staying disciplined to that, I mean, I was in the unknown. I was literally not quite sure what was going to happen. I had no idea that was going to happen. But I decided to give it a go because why not? Because the other way we were going about it wasn't working that well. So stick with the principle and see how it goes. And then there was this one moment when she smiled. She's got the most beautiful smile I've seen. And I'm like, you're smiling. You're smiling. So something had happened for her. So that's where I wanted to stay. The other thing is that I didn't ask her to figure it out. I didn't ask her to look for a quiet mind. I didn't ask her to seek a positive feeling. I didn't ask her to listen for wisdom. I didn't ask her. I mean, I did nothing. I literally did nothing. And let me tell you, that was the most amazing thing I did. It felt so good to do nothing. But we're also caught up. Will you do something for me, please? That kind of thing. But anyway, so that's the basis. And before I go into the formula, Kate, you shared an insight with me that even put me by surprise, that you have been taught for most of your years how to do it. Would you be able to say something about that, Keith, please?
Oh, say more about what you're referring to so I could jog my memory.
Okay, relevance.
Yeah, relevance. Yeah. relevance. Um, in my mind, relevance kind of assumed a sort of like relevance. You have to. The thought was through all the helping with all the years and many of the people that I've worked with, um, relevance was it kind of became like a necessity. Um, you had to make what you were teaching or talking about or posing or connecting with the client through a god, a demigod really of relevance. And so it took on a kind of habit for me and a sort of unwitting necessity. Like it was the portal that I had to um, find to put onto the client in order for this the principles teaching to connect. And and I got carried away with it. I got um, I got tempted by relevance, and so a client might enter in and have all of these thoughts and issues and problems, etc. But as they reported that, I was kind of searching for how to really get through to them through relevance. And if you think about it, the principles are the most uh, spiritually relevant truth of the ages for all humanity. If you want to deal with ultimate truth, ultimate relevance, don't forget about the principles. Uh, and for years, it was hard to talk about the principles. I remember for many years, uh, people thought, "Oh well, you can't really." I remember I remember early on, um, um, Sidney Banks was giving a talk, and then at the break, he said, "Now I want you all to talk, and and I want you to talk about the principles." And I remember the leader at that point said, "Oh, well, that's not really our department, Sid. Your department is the principals. Our department, when it comes time to talk about the principles, we have to turn that over to you." And he was appalled by that answer, and he said, "No, the principles have to be your topic. They have to be your message. They have to be whatever you understand about the principles should be the focus of your counseling and your intervention and your help that you're bestowing to people." And we didn't really like that. I found that to be really challenging. I didn't know what to make really of the principles. And so and I think that leader was voicing what most of us in the room, and there were maybe 50 of us in the room, all the great leaders of the principles were in the room, and none of them really knew how to step forward to point to the principles. And Sid was the only one that insisted that we do it. And so I'll never forget that comment. We figured this wasn't our department. Well, Sid says, the heck it's not. And if that's not your department, you don't know what you're talking about. And he was really um, insistent. And it was a kind of a beginning of a slight turning point, but still, and I think still today, would you listen to authors and teachers from all over the world? The principles are not really um, the accepted focus of of the of this life-changing intervention of the principles, and that reality formula encapsulates that the truth of the principles as regards to the product, the reality of everybody, and mind plus thought plus consciousness equals reality is the true formula, the true psychological formula, uh, the immortal truth, the immortal formula um, that humanity has been searching for since the beginning of time. And who would think, this was just my own exposure, who would think that a ninth grade educated welder would find that? And when he found that, he said to his mother-in-law, I doubt many people on earth know that these three principles exist. They exist. They're real. They're not just metaphors or good ideas or concepts. They're truth. And if you become more and more acquainted with that as truth, your lives must change. And because your mind, it will change your mind. It will change your feeling of everything. So when people talk, very often people talk about the feeling or but but there's something deeper. Uh, Sid would point to the feeling, but he would never say the principles are a feeling. They're the missing link to God. And he never would have underestimated or flippantly valued them as something so utterly unmeaningful to people. It's a stunning consequence to the mental illness of the world. So relevance, so these other things, and it'll be often um, touted by um, other teachers that, oh, it's just this, it's just that, but don't be fooled. Um, Keep your ears peeled for something profound, something unthinkable, something meaningful to of tremendous power. That's what we wanted to make a statement about today. Relevance. Brett?
The Enlightened Gardener Revisited. Um, I'm on page 42. I'm going to start up with the paragraph before that formula. Okay. And he says, Eric, if you want my advice, I will say this. Look carefully. Investigate how you, as a free thinking agent, use the three universal gifts of mind, consciousness, and thought to perceive the reality you live in every second of every day. Here is the formula that will give you a solid foundation on which to build your search and assist you to find many of the answers you seek. There it is. That's the only thing we ever really need to know. Okay. Okay. So mind, thought, and consciousness giving you a reality every second of every day, which means you're using the principles, whether you know about it or not, to give you the reality you're having right now, which is so good to know. So good to know, because this stopped me from believing that what I see on my computer monitor is giving me the reality I see. So, so okay, so this formula is a very interesting one. It's like nobody's ever spoken about it before. Nobody's ever described how reality gets created. Okay, and and I was trying to figure out for a long time what mind, thought, and consciousness does and get a sense of it. But where I want to go today is how did this compare to what we believe reality is created? So very often I'll say, well, you know what, there's a monitor in front of me. That's what's giving me my reality now, right? And there's no argument about it. There's no questions about it. There's no doubt about it. So we just kind of take it for granted. Okay. So it's like there's something out there or in front of us. That's what's giving me the reality I'm having in this moment. Okay. So we now have a formula that's proposed by Sticky Bank, and we also have something else in comparison to it, which is outside equals reality. Okay. That's what we traditionally walk through, like believing this is how it works, right? So the outside could be any circumstances, any situation, any event, and it doesn't have to be in this moment either. It can be something in the past, it can be something in the future, right? It's absolutely anything. And then suddenly we realize this is what creating that reality. Well, the event is saying something contradictory, very contradictory. Okay, so we now have two so-called reality formulas, but one of them proposed by Citibank, and one of them just seemed to be the historical way of life. Okay, before I go any further, Kate, is there anything you would like to add to this?
Well, I think the illusion of the second formula is so if you look into it carefully in in terms of the principles, in light of the principles, let's say, and you hear what people are uh, including yourself are often fooled by is the cause of world anguish, world upset, world bother, world mental illness. It really is. If this formula, this first formula is true, then the the levels of suffering and levels of mental anguish from child abuse, child neglect, murder, but also cheating and uh, fear and as Sid would say often, insecurity. The insecurity is the common ailment of all the mental illness that plagues the world, are all products of that second formula. And uh, the illusion of it's not a formula at all. It completely falls apart in light of the principles. Completely, completely falls apart. So we have the answer to this pain and suffering, and it's embedded in these two formulas. One creates the suffering because we don't know where the suffering is really being created, how it's being created. It looks like it's being created by politics or my mother-in-law or my wife or my husband or my children or my we've got millions and millions and millions of causes, none of which are true. So the simplicity of this reality formula on the top there that Britt has and Sid has proposed is it it's the new world. It's the actual foundation of a new um, alternative, a new dimension of life that could easily bring what everybody's been looking for, the peace of the world now here on Earth. Um, could be it's the promise of it, and to think that again that this formula has been revealed now and been and is being taught in some very limited ways is just it gives me great hope. For I have two grandsons and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, you know, you could grow up in a different world than grandpa grew up in, the world of social problems and poverty and starvation and cruelty, domestic abuse, domestic violence, eating disorders, depression, all these terrible mental problems that humanity currently suffers from could disappear from the face of the earth, or is beginning to disappear from the face of the earth because of the truth of this formula. And the illusion of the outside, it doesn't really work that way. Ever. It can't. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to leave this formula there now, and then I'm going to start using abbreviation to speed things up a bit. So we have maybe these letters one day will be as popular as E equals MC squared. Okay. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The mind and consciousness are steady bent state himself, right? They are not born. They are formless, meaning you can't really think about it because what you think is then born. Okay, so I can put in here. Formless, right? And the reality you see is form, right? Hence, mind is the energy of all things, whether formless or form. Another way of saying it is mind, the energy of all things, before creation and after creation. So there's no such thing as creating. There's before and after, and nothing in between. It goes from before to after instantly. Okay? In comparison to the alternative reality, right, which is, let's call it, outside equals reality. We can say that the outside is obviously form, and we have a reality which is also form. Right? So now we can simplify the principle quite simply, right? Everything that you go through in your life is in form that were created through the principle, i.e. from the formless, okay? The formula created the form, right? But the way we like to live life without the principle is that we have the form creating the form. It's a very different equation altogether, or as sometimes we like to call it. This one is logical, but this one does not sound logical to me. Because there is a logic here, we have a science. Because there's the logic that contradicts itself, we cannot have a science. Okay. So if you want to learn about something logical, go in this direction. If you want to live illogically, innocently, go with this. So there's a logic here, formless of form. That makes sense because we've all had experiences in our lives where we saw something and it never came from out there. It never came from another person. It never came from a book. It never came from a video on the internet. It never came from a training call from another person. It never came from anything. It came from nothing. So this is another way of saying nothing. From nothing to something. Nothing to something. Whereas this one has something to something. There's something missing here. Nothing to something. Complete equation. Something to something. There's something missing. How are we doing so far, Kate?
Yeah, well, we're doing great. We're doing great. And that's something that nothing, how does that work? You know, that's the six, like when I was young, they had the $64,000 question, a television show, and that's the $64,000 question: is how does nothing become something?
Yeah. So to build on that question, right? The word formless and form are just something as an attempt to describe what cannot be described. Okay, so formless form, before creation, after creation, and so on. One of the things that I like, was very helpful for me in the work Kate and I am doing with our apprentice, is this. Wisdom comes from the principles, and then in order to have that wisdom, it needs to be brought into form so that you can have the experience of wisdom in form. Okay, but if you go with this one, oh, excuse me. Right. If you go with this one, right, because wisdom is another word for the formless, and we have form and form here, there's no room for wisdom to appear in your reality. Let me say that again. If you go with this, there is no room for wisdom to appear in your reality. This one, yes. This one, no. So the question becomes, do you want to have wisdom become part of your life? If yes, go here. If no, go here then. Okay. There's another word we can use instead. Again, with helps of that. With wisdom, I just want to say a little bit about that. For me, my favorite description of wisdom came from a conversation that Kate and Stid had. Right? And Kate asked, no, it was Stid that asked Kate, what is the universe made of? What is the universe made of? Right? Kate, do you want to carry on with that story? Because it was you that did that story.
Yeah. So he suddenly asked me that one day, one of our conversations. Well, Keith, what do you think the universe is made of? And so in my thought, I didn't say this because I had realized through the years I'm dealing with a very profound man here. But what I thought was, in a cocky kind of way, I thought, well, I know what the universe is made of. I've seen 1,000 television programs about distant planets and uh, all kinds of interplanetary phenomena, quasars and black holes and uh, all these sorts of planets and stars that are innumerable. And that's what I thought of. And uh, I thought, well, it's made of stuff, things, planets, stars. Um, and which, obviously isn't a very holistic picture. And so I said, well, what is the universe made of? Said, because I knew my answer was pretty flimsy, um, but I didn't know what it was made of. And he said, knowledge. And I was struck dumb by that response. It was like I never would have imagined the answer to that question was knowledge. That the universe would be made of knowledge was so beautiful, so inclusive, so so settled my mind into separations between physical and spiritual, or God and other things, or whatever. It just quieted my my insanity, and I felt humbled, but in a really beautiful way, so that when I could look at things people, objects in the sky, being with knowledge, being of knowledge, being one with knowledge was so inexplicably simple and meaningful to me that it it was healing and brought me truth. It brought me understanding. And I'm going to refer to something that Sid wrote in my book about the three principles, by the way, that will pertain to all of this too. He said, this is what he wrote in my book. What you have to do is silence your minds, your little minds, and perhaps you will go past my words and have a realization from within. First, we use the gift of universal mind, that is the intelligence of all things, before creation and after creation. When we use this gift of universal mind properly, we are in the state of love and true understanding. Secondly, universal consciousness is the principle that gives us the ability to recognize creation and all it entails. And when we use our consciousness properly, we are in the state of love and true understanding. Thirdly, we have the universal gift of thought that allows us to go through life as thinking creatures. Again, when we use this precious gift of divine thought properly, we are in the state of love and true understanding. Brett?
Thank you, Keith. When I first heard the universe was made of knowledge, the first thing that struck me was the infinity of knowledge. And I knew I didn't know everything at that point. I couldn't do, because when you realize there is an infinity of knowledge, there's no end to what knowledge you could have. There's no end to what you could learn. There's no end to what thoughts you can have. Okay. And that's where the potential lies. That's another word for wisdom for me. So that was what I was struck by. So I was like, oh, so they also reflected the neutrality of the principle of mind, because the principle of mind is the source of all things, the source of all knowledge, whether positive or negative, whether inside out or outside in, whether spiritual or not spiritual, or everything. Everything comes from the principle of mind. Okay, so with that in mind, I can also swap out this word wisdom and put in healing. Okay, because once I saw that healing comes from the principles, in other words, the formless, right? It's not going to come from the form. And because due to the form, I knew that our client would not get better by going here. So at that point, I had the discipline, the wherewithal to stick to this area. Because even if it doesn't happen straight away, that's where it is. No ifs, no buts. And to see the client suddenly having a smile and me not doing anything, I was like, who touched that space? It might be brief, but she took that space for sure. For sure. So if you want healing, psychological healing, the removal of thoughts that you don't want to have anymore, you won't find it in those thoughts that you're having. You will find it before form. Before. That's what I find. Another word for form is another word for form or your reality is your thought. Your thought, not the same as the principle of thought. Principle of thought is neutral. Your thought is not neutral. Okay, so that's why the principles is so helpful. We stay neutral about this. Okay, so healing comes from the principle. It is built into the principle. And all Keith and I do with this client as best as we can was, okay, you've got this going on, but can we talk about this and not let this determine this? We stop that. It is just the formula. That's all we talk about. Okay. So that, I mean, I don't take any credit for what I did. I mean, I didn't come up with the knowledge that enabled me to be able to share something that had no form in it, that had no situation, that had no circumstance. Because all of this is before creation. How can you talk about before creation? Very difficult. But when you deal with after creation, oh boy, there's a lot of things we can talk about, and none of them will carry wisdom. Okay. So what we're saying is that these principles are formless. Okay? If you put a form on it, you've missed it. So if you have thinking about the principle of mind, or the principle of thought, or the principle of consciousness, you've already taken one step too far. One step too far. Okay, so the quiet mind really means, okay, you're having your thought, you're having a reality, you're having a feeling, you're having everything about the human experience, right? But you don't have to go in it. Don't have to search there. Don't have to. Because what makes you go searching for it, to analyze, to figure things out, is the absence of these principles. Meaning, you'll be in this one. You have the form creating the form. I'm now going to wonder, oh, what do I do? How do I make sense of this? Because there's no logic there to help you to make sense of what you're going through. The principle, oh, now I know why I'm having this thought. Now I know why I'm having this feeling. It's not you working it out for yourself. It's the principle providing the intelligence for you to have insight into. So you could go, oh, that's what it is. So it's the principle that gives you a quiet mind. So the genuine quiet mind is not man-made. It is principle-based. There was when I was learning with Keaton Bowder quite a few years ago, one of the things that Bowder liked to talk about is that the principle of thought is constant. Okay, and that was a bit confrontational for me, to be honest with you, because the principle of thought and constant, but that can't be true because I have many different thoughts a day. They come and they go, but because they come and go, they're not constant. And here's Bowser saying the principle of thought is constant. So I'm like, hmm. I think she's talking about the principle of thought in a way that I didn't see before. So if it's constant, it's something that never changes. And yet my thoughts are changing. I'm like, she's not talking about my thought, is she? She's talking about something else. Now, if the principle of thought is constant, it also must mean that I'm having a reality every second of every day. Just like what Steady Bank said in the book. And I'm going, right, wait a minute. That's a bit wild. Why was it wild? Because I thought I had a quiet mind. I thought a quiet mind meant I'm not having a thought. Okay? But as I learned more about these principles, I realized I'm having a thought every day, every second. I just don't know what they are. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So since the principles are constant and they create our reality in every moment, I realize a quiet mind is not about not having a thought. It's something a little bit different here. And I thought that if I am having a reality in every moment, then a quiet mind must enable me to have a reality in every moment. Doesn't matter what the reality is, right? But I'm not doing something about that reality. Okay, I'm not thinking about that reality. I'm not going into that reality. Right? So I started to see, oh, a quiet mind means that this is the quiet mind formula, if you like, another way of saying it. But if I take away the principles, right, I have the form, and that's all I've got. Therefore, it makes sense for our mind to go in that direction. So reality equals reality, which is the same with this formula. But because the principles are not there, the original reality will not look like reality anymore. It becomes outside. Same with this. But as soon as you have the principles back in, right, then this outside is realized as the reality because it's your thought, and therefore, because you now know the source of that reality, what you do with that reality will not make sense anymore. So you get a quieter mind. See what I mean? We've removed something because of the principles. When you take away the principle, you're going to be adding this, and then you'll add this again, and then you add another one. It's on and on and on, and your mind gets busy. But as soon as you have the principle, you only take one thought, and it's not time-based, not space-based, not matter-based. As soon as you have the principle, this, done, healing, quiet mind, wisdom at work. So you have the ability to have a quiet mind that happens through these principles, not you. Heat.
It's beautiful. It, you could see the danger of going into the thinking system to figure out, and I can hear it. I think it was the most frequent thing I ever heard Sid say was, don't try to figure it out. Don't try to figure it out. Just listen. Don't try to figure it out. He said that over and over again. You can see why with this formula, for example, depicting this, I think, in another way, um, or in our way, can illuminate the illusion of, and Valda said it once very beautifully. She said, one step, a step, uh, uh, one step to the outside is a step in the wrong direction. One step to the outside is a step in the wrong direction. And she said, it just occurred to her to say that. It's a very simple statement, but um, another thing that she said when she was in the nursing home, by the way, Valda's home now, and which I'm very happy about. And we have a different life now, but she's home. But at one point I asked her about, I said, how do you do this? How do you handle this? Like, you're in an institution, and everybody in this institution is really struggling, and even the nurses and doctors were often struggling too. But the patients were really, I mean, they would be lost in their anger or their problems or their fears or their doubts. I mean, they were really uh, lost. I said, how do you not get caught up in that? And she and she says really simply, as she would often punctuate truthful things and say, she said, oh, I can't think about that. And I thought, well, oh, that's sort of like the end of the story. If you can't think about that, if you can't do those little R's and R's and R's and R's and R's that Brett is putting up there, it just short circuits the whole uh, illusion creating enigmas that we all get caught in, and we think about, well, my dad said this, or I'll never get over my the pain of this instance or that instance. And you realize how forgiveness does that same thing. Is forgiveness short circuits the reality creation of dealing with that formula below that doesn't really exist. It doesn't, there's no truth in it. But when we don't know that we're in a formula that there's no truth in, we get caught in the details, don't we? And we suffer necessarily from the problem of our own creation. And this is the promise for world peace, is that people will start to wake up and quit creating problems, creating a multiplicity of problems based on their own illusions. This is the cure that comes from within, the consciousness within, the 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 Buddha consciousness within, or the Christ consciousness within, or it doesn't matter what you call it, the consciousness within this formula repairs you and wakes you up to the truth of life, and you can really begin to enjoy life rather than suffer um, from your own misunderstanding. That's the way the world will wake up to the wars and the hate and the unrest and the jealousy, all these self-inflicted wounds that plague us. We heal And if we heal, the world heals with us. And if we don't heal, the world suffers with us. We are the instruments of this formula, and we are within us is the answer, not out there, but within our own truth that we begin to hold more, more dearly, because it really is our salvation and our uh, transcendence. So, do you think this is a good time to stop, Brad?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's also a good place to remind people of our program beginning tomorrow.
Yeah,
So they're calling the program tomorrow the three principles from the beginning, because it literally is the beginning. This formula we think represents an excellent starting point for anybody who wants to learn about these principles. It's kind of like we were living in or in the belief that the Earth was at the center of the universe, and then as soon as Copernicus had his thought that no, the sun that's at the center of the solar system, and the Earth goes around the sun, right? That's the beginning of a body of knowledge that we had no idea existed. Okay, and obviously there's lots of implications. What has changed as a result of realizing that the Earth is a planet going around the sun? Who knows more about that than I do? So it's the same with this, right? As soon as you know that there are these principles that create the reality every day, every second of our life, that is the beginning of a new body of knowledge in which we could dive into and take a look and see what's there. So it's the, it's, it's the beginning. Right? Very, very few people have taken that journey to step into this body of knowledge. But we here are the pioneers. I mean, okay, Citibank had it in 50 years, but even in those 50 years, still very few people have taken that step. So the program tomorrow is the beginning. We're going to dive into it. There's a lot more to say about this, and hopefully it will give you a head start in learning about the principles that many of us have had to spend years, decades trying to have insight into. So this program, the three principles from the beginning, is basically to shorten the lifespan of you having insight into how your own experiences work. And hopefully it will be so short it can happen in an instant, rather than taking, I mean, I know a few people who've learned about the three principles for 20, 30, 40 years and still doesn't feel quite right. So that's why we're doing this program. It's great for people who haven't come across it. It's great for people who are just starting out. And it's also great for people who are well versed in this understanding, but would like a refresher or a reminder, or come back to basics again. It's like, oh, okay, that kind of thing. So that's the premise we're making this program. And because of that, we didn't put a fixed price on it. Right? We gave you the choice to pay whatever you want. It could be $0, $10, $20, $50, $100, or $200, or any custom amount. It's whatever you want to pay. Okay, if you want to pay nothing, perfectly fine with us. So please, you're welcome to join us. I would love to have you there. We would love to share this knowledge. We would love, it's not so much me and Kate wanting to share this knowledge. It's more that we want you to be healed by these principles. We want you to have wisdom from these principles. We want you to have a good life. We want you to experience more love and true understanding. The principles make that possible. Kate, that was a trained attempt at marketing and getting people to join our programs.
Well, it's a beautiful job. Thank you, Brett. Thank you all
Okay.
for being with us, being touched, being open to be touched by this message. It's beautiful.
And before we go, because I have a lot of respect for somebody who online with us, her name is Miriam Felix. She's raised her hand. So for me, I'm like, I want to give her the space to say something. I think she's got some good stuff. So Miriam, come join us, please.
Hello, Brett. Nice to see you twice in a week.
Likewise, likewise.
I was thinking a lot about everything that's been spoken, and what was coming to my mind, and I would like to sort of bounce that in this conversation and hear what you have to say and what Keith has to say. And that is that those two things that I really feel were inherent and integral to the learning of the three principles with Keith and Valda over the years, and which I would just feel need to perhaps be emphasized a little bit in this conversation with diagrams that you've got. And it basically boils down to the idea of the oneness of reality and the spiritual unification. And what I mean by that is the following, and that is that even though it's true that what you have under your red line isn't scientific, and even though it's true that what you have under that red line is not possible, the reality that we have as human beings is that we have the capacity to have that to believe something which is impossible is possible. Our human experience and our soul fusion of our body and soul fusion has that capacity. This is what I have understood from Keith and Valda's teachings, to misunderstand, to see something which isn't possible. So in essence, it's true that that isn't, and therefore reality belongs only on top of the line. But until the world changes, until humanity becomes a different form, which that's another discussion. But the actual facts that we'll all always be dealing with is our potential to make that mistake or to see things in that way. And we won't necessarily have control over how we see that, when we see that, and if we see that. So what Keith and Valda used to always use was the language of now you see it, now you don't. And another aspect of that was that Valda often used to emphasize the fact that in a situation where we understand the scientific reality that we can make that mistake. Okay, so the mistake isn't scientific, right? The O equals R is erroneous, but our human capacity to hold that error is a fact. And that therefore means that we can, if we don't have that clear in our appreciation of this truth and the principles that you're describing, which can be the end of world suffering, then we can create a conflict in a person of wishing to have more of that and less of the other, of yes, seeing it and not seeing it. And even though I appreciate everything that you're saying, I'm wondering, if that can be that. And in a way, I feel like it also speaks to something that you said towards the end of what you were saying, Brett. And that was the idea that we are the pioneers with this. And I think that every human being, since the first human being that was created, I think Sydney Banks used to say, if you don't understand some of this, you're either in a hospital or in a prison. In other words, the as much as we have the capacity for what's under the red line, we also have the capacity for what's over the red line, even if we don't know about it. So I think what's unique to our group and what's unique to this journey is the articulation of that experience in a beautiful, clear, and scientific way, which narrows down what we're looking for.
Yeah, beautiful. It ends the dirt.
Yeah. So I would say the description of ourselves as pioneers, to take any egotistical element out of that, would be to recognize that you can pioneer an articulation, but you can't pioneer a spiritual fact.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, the principles have been around since before the beginning of time, whatever that means, right? But we do become pioneers as human beings to come across this pre-existing knowledge, and now we can start
And to
learning
make a
about it.
campaign, to make a campaign of giving people the opportunity to see more and more of it. That's a beautiful thing. And I'm
That's it,
delighted to have the privilege of knowing all of you to talk about that with.
Well, beautiful. Thank you, Miriam. That was really delightful to hear. Right. Okay, I think we're definitely done now. So I've sent an email again tonight, inviting you to join the program starting tomorrow. Until then, I wish you very well. God bless each and every one of you. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.